back for Enlighten Up. You are tuning into episode 6, A Love Conspiracy, Chemicals versus Spirituality, and Being Selfish versus Disney Expectations. We have all been taught a very, very romantic story about what love actually is, but truth be told, it's not really working for anyone. So we're going to really deconstruct what love is versus what we've been taught. And we're going to talk about the impact of how being selfish can actually help your relationships. But before we get into that, we're going to start talking about spirituality and chemicals when it comes to love. Michael's got a little bit of a jaded perspective on love, so we're going to listen to that, but we're also joined by a very good friend of ours, Brian, so that he can bring in another male perspective into this topic while we even out the playing field with Lisa and I. So let's jump in and find out what all four of us had to say. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Enlighten Up. Today's episode is about love and relationships, and I have Michael and Lisa with me, but we also have a guest in today to offer us another male perspective, as we think that this topic of love and relationships should be pretty balanced. So we decided to bring another male perspective, and we've brought in our friend Brian. Brian, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Nicole? Thanks, everybody, for having me. I'm really excited.
Well, we're happy to have you on, and I think it's going to even things out, even the playing field out for Michael, right, Michael?
I just don't bring enough masculinity to this group.
I don't think that's what she meant.
That's not what I meant. I did not say that.
Brian's evening it out.
I'm on Team Skeptic.
There you go.
Yes. You're both the males, and you're both on Team Skeptic. So that's good. Bring it. We love the skepticism. So today we're talking about love and relationships because we kind of ended off in episode 5 talking about that. So why don't we go straight into what love is? Because I think the world has a pretty effed up version of what love really is. Brian, since you are the honorable guest today, why don't you tell us what love is for you?
Well, I think before I say that, I think it's fair for the listeners to know that I think one reason I'm here is because I'm in love with one of the panelists. Lisa and I, not you, Michael. Lisa are in love, and I'm really honored, to bring that perspective, not just about love, but also, in the bigger picture of everything you guys are talking about. But to me, love, gosh, I was married for 14 years, and I am pretty sure I was never in love. Certainly loved my ex-wife, especially as the mother of our daughter. But, after finding real love, or true love, as they say, I think it opens my eyes to the past to know that I probably was not in love before, and that's a sad thing, but it's also a happy thing, going forward. But I'm really interested. One thing Michael said in the first podcast, he talked about how the church indoctrinates us with certain beliefs, and I think our families and how we grow up, how we're raised, the communities we're raised in, the schools we go to, society in general indoctrinates us with certain beliefs about not necessarily what is love, but what is relationship. And I think we go about our lives looking for something. I think a lot of people on the planet, they want to be in relationship, and we we drag around, we look at relationship through those glasses, through those beliefs. And to me, what I've realized is love is blind. It when you find love, you don't worry about those beliefs. You're just in that moment, in that feeling, in love.
Well, would you say though that not necessarily that love is blind, but love is non-judgmental?
Sure, I think that's maybe that is more accurate. And again, for me, it's just experiences. It's little things. I remember the first time I felt love. It was after I was married. I was actually living in China at the time, and I met someone, and she had physical characteristics that I probably would have felt, that I was not attracted to. And when I realized I was in love with that person, none of those things mattered. And I know that's a small or maybe trivial way to oversimplify it, but it was really profound to me.
So what do you think? So you were married to someone for quite a long time and you never felt in love, as you say, and I know Lisa has a thing to say about that, but what was different for you in what you thought love was when you were married versus when you really understood love?
Well, I think it's because when I got married, I didn't get married because I was in love. Mm-hmm. I got married because it was the next checkbox on my list of things to do after I, graduated college and became a young professional. And my priorities were in the wrong order. I was not getting married for love. I was getting married to get married.
Well, I think that's a big thing. I think that happens a lot. I think a lot of people
Absolutely.
end up getting married because they think that's what the next the next step in the evolution of life is. You get a job, you get security, you get a wife or a husband, you have kids, you get your house, and you just follow this belief of what everyone believes their lives are supposed to play out like. It's like we all are supposed to live the same story, so to speak.
Yeah, we're taught that as young kids. It's the roadmap. Here's what you're supposed to do. And so we do what we think that we're supposed to do. And we don't do it based off of how we feel. We don't use our feelings as our guiding system, which is what they're there for. We do what we are taught to do, follow the rules.
Well, I can speak to this very openly and honestly because, I'm 40 and I've never been married. In fact, I'm the only one in this group who's never been married.
So you're smarter than all of us.
But, I will say that I've dealt with people kind of looking at me going, so when are you getting married? Like, looking at their hand, like as if they've got a watch on and looking at me like, you're not getting any younger. And it's like, well, I realize all of that, but I've always looked at life a little differently. I feel like if the right person had come along, then I would never have hesitated, but the right person hasn't come along for me. And I feel like there's so many things I wanted to do in my life that are so off the roadmap that we're given when we're young on how life is supposed to go, that I figured, why am I going to wait till later in my life to explore that when I want to do it now? And a lot of people don't understand you when you kind of go off that roadmap and you start making a life for yourself that is not typical of what most people do. And I've come up against a lot of people who are saying, well, Nicole, what's your 5-year plan? Or like, what's your 10-year plan? Or, and I'm just never wanted to live my life that way. And
so are you saying that you've never been in love?
No, I didn't say that. I said I've never been married.
Well, but you talked about that never having that feeling, and so what's that feeling that was missing to push it to marriage?
It's not that I didn't have the
as the
feeling.
song goes, is love and marriage together, or are they two separate ideals?
Well, it's for me. I didn't meet someone who I felt I could commit to for the rest of my life. I look at marriage as a very sacred union, and if I'm going to do it, I want to make sure that I'm committing to someone I feel like I could spend the rest of my life with. And I haven't met someone yet who I feel like I could spend the rest of my life with. So it's not so much that I haven't felt in love with someone, it's that I felt that I could commit wholeheartedly.
I think there's two.
Again,
there's
going
two
back,
different-
she's the smartest of us four, so okay.
And there's two different. I mean, there's being in love, but there's also being. I mean, I've been in love with someone who I would never want, who I knew I would never want to spend the rest of my life with, that, would never make a great partner for me for the rest of my life. But that doesn't mean I didn't have, those feelings of like, I think there's so many different, love is such an ambiguous word, really. And there's so many different types of feelings within love. Like, my ex-husband, I loved him. And, I would have laid down my life for him. But I wasn't in love with him, and he was the father of my children, and I loved and respected him as my husband. And I felt like I loved him more than I had ever loved anybody, but just not in that in love sort of way, And then there's other people I feel like I've been in love with, but I know that they just weren't the right person for me. Like Nicole said, I didn't want to make a commitment to them. I knew it wasn't, what I wanted. And then there's I'm in love with someone who I feel like I could spend the rest of my life with, where all the pieces come together. So, I don't know. Our beliefs, like Brian said, I think really cloud our judgment of what love is.
So what do you think? So what do you think most people think love is? Like, where do you think people go wrong?
I think most people think that love is like your other half. Love fills the voids that you need to fill. I think most people don't understand that you need to love yourself fully, and you need to be whole on your own, and that your partner and the person that you're in love with and that you're going to spend the rest of your life with, potentially, or maybe not the rest of your life. It doesn't necessarily a good, loving relationship doesn't have to last the rest of your life, in my opinion. But I just think that we expect too much from other people. Like, they're there to fill a void. Like, this person should do this for me. And we have so many rules associated with what we think love is. Like, as long as that person is filling our needs, then we continue to love them. And as soon as they stop filling our needs, then we no longer love them, and our love is very conditional rather than unconditional.
So those are expectations, then.
Yes,
expectations.
And those expectations, like you said, do put conditions on love. But the reality is that love, in the real sense of what love is actually unconditional. There should be no conditions when you give your love. You give your love without any conditions, and you're not expecting anything in return. And so that, I feel, is where a lot of relationships get started on the wrong foot, and then it's hard to maintain that over months, years, decades. I know, Michael, you feel like there's just so many different expectations coming from both on men's side and women's side.
My biggest fear in today's topic is I'm going to bring one of the crappiest views of love out of probably all four of us. I think I felt this thing that you guys keep referring to once in my life. And it just is just full of sadness and disappointment to me. So it kind of like steered me away from even thinking about it again. I'm probably a head case that I could probably pay lots of money for some shrink to fix for the next 10 years when it comes to that. However, I'm okay with what I'm doing now. And what I'm doing now is being very careful of using the term love if I ever do start dating with somebody, because I think us as a society has just ruined that word specifically. Love has become just a generic hello, goodbye of a lot of emotions or a lot of things that we say out there. I mean, I think I've mentioned this before in a past podcast, but I live in South Florida, of course, in the culture down here. You know, you have a great conversation with the cash register person, and you'll say, "Oh my gosh, I love you so much," and that was like 2 minutes after meeting them. I mean, it's like we just use it so ridiculously that I think it loses value when we are younger and more impressionable.
Yeah, but okay, you saying that though, you're already putting conditions on love. You have to feel a certain way in order to express love, or it's got to be.
Well, to me, love is just a bunch of chemicals. So that's why there's conditions in my definition of love. It's just a bunch of certain chemicals that we feel a big boost of when we fall into this thing. And unless we get some sort of continuous dose of this chemical drug in our relationships, it usually ends, or we just are in that stagnant relationship of, yeah, whatever. He's kind of like my roommate person.
Is part of the problem that we only have one word for love, and it's love? You know, other languages have a lot more depth.
I don't know. It's a good question. I just feel like in our language, we don't have the word that I think Lisa and Nicole are talking about.
Unconditional love?
Or I've heard it referred to as absolute love. So it's like, you know, unconditional love, I have a real challenge with that word too.
Why?
Or
Where does the challenge come in for that?
Because, I just believe it will always be conditions of loving somebody. I mean, even to the point where you're like, well, you know, your mother has unconditional love for a child. I have seen moms hate their own kids, like right in front of my face, with a passion, like hope they go to jail hate. Maybe not hope to kill hate, but hope they go to jail hate. And it's just like that, you know, you think that parents, out of all people, parents would have unconditional love for their children down to a T, but there's a lot of cases where it's not true. So I'm not quite sure. Again, I'm bringing probably a very worst view of love, but I'm not quite sure I even believe in quote unquote unconditional love.
I think that we attach, let me see how to say this, our actions to whether we love somebody or not. So let's say, and there's so many different kinds of love that we're talking about here too. There's romantic love, there's the love of a friend, there's the love of a child, a parent, you know, there's all sorts of different relationships. So there's definitely needs to be a lot more words than just one for love. But I think that we confuse what actions that we take to like, it's like we have to prove our love or something. Like you said, you've seen mothers do things to their children, you know, wanting them to go to jail or whatever, not loving them unconditionally. You can love, like you could be in a relationship where you're in love with someone, and then you can decide that this is not the right relationship for you for whatever reason. Maybe, you know, that you feel like that person just isn't heading down the same path that you are, or you're looking for something different in your future, or you want to go two different ways. But you are in love with each other and you love each other. So you can choose to end that relationship and never stop loving that person. To me, that's unconditional love. Like, I love you regardless of whether you decide that you need, you know, to move to France or whatever, and that's not in my playbook, and I'm not interested, and I don't want to do that, you know, and you can still love that person unconditionally and not have a loving relationship with them anymore. Does that make sense? Like it's like you're not putting actions.
I guess you can still care for somebody. I mean, most people say, I still care for you after the relationship ends, but I'm just not in love with you anymore. And,
Michael,
we use the term love and in love as it's a separate entity. Like I'm not.
They are different.
I love you, but I'm not in love with you. And I agree, they are separate. In love with you is all those chemicals that happens at the beginning. Love you is like, all right, you're an asshole, but I love you.
No, I think in love is just that romantic love, like that romantic love that you're not going to have that with like a friend or a brother or a sister or a mother, father, aunt, uncle. I think that's all it means. It's just, it's that romantic love. But Michael, what I keep hearing from you is that you feel like someone needs to be deserving of the word love. Like it's exclusive. It's not inclusive.
Okay. I'm not going to go there. Instead, I would probably say, and this is going to sound horrible, and this is one of the reasons why I guess I have interesting conversations with you guys, but your spirituality that you have great faith in, first of all, is very attractive. And I really do sincerely say I want to get to where you guys are feeling right now. However, you keep mentioning love, and love is like, and it just keeps on getting me back to a lot of, Facebook quotes and all that junk. But like love is like how you're going to take care of everything. And I really just don't believe in your guys' love. That's my challenge. I agree. I think love is just more of like a chemical formula in our lives where we grow attachments to people.
Well, if you were going to make love about science, then I think...
well, that's what it is to me. It's science. It's science.
Okay, well,
to
that's
me,
where all your problems stem from.
But like I told you, like I gave the disclaimer at the beginning of today, I may not be the best person to talk about with this.
No. I think, you're bringing in a perspective. I think that's good. But I think that, when you bring science into love and make love all about science, that's where you lose the essence of love.
But since I too rely a lot on math and science, and Lisa can attest to that because I'm always saying math and science, because things need to make sense for me. And then when we started dating and being together, and then I came to that realization, wow, this person is really the other side of, my coin, or, the mirror image of my soul. And I want to, be in her orbit every moment of every day. That's beyond science, Michael. And I think that's the point I was trying to make at the beginning, is we have beliefs, and your belief right now is that it's a scientific and it's a chemical process, and then all of a sudden your beliefs are shattered when you meet that person.
Yeah, okay. This is why it's good to have you on the show, Brian.
Listen, spirituality picks up where science leaves, because science is so limited in its own. Like, I love science too. Science is my favorite subject through school and university. However, it is so limited in the way that it's designed. It limits itself just in the very design of its nature, or in the nature of its design, I should say. And so spirituality picks up where basically science leaves off, and there is a vast area that science has left out. So
well, and love, I believe, is limited to our species, and science covers all species and all aspects of life and geology and everything on our planet. But
I don't know if I believe that necessarily.
No.
I mean, you see some serious love from some animals.
Yeah, love is not limited to our species by any. If anything, animals love unconditionally, unlike humans. No.
We should all love like dogs. That's all there is.
But dogs, I think the love that you again, I'm going to sound horrible. The love that you give dogs back, and what love the dogs give back to you, is because you're the one feeding them. You're the one taking care of them. They're dependent on you. I feel like sometimes we fall in love or love someone because we feel dependent. Like we depend on them to be happy today. We depend on them to get the promotion in our job. And like that's what I think where the expectations that we were referring to earlier of love kind of can kind of get lost in relationships.
No, but okay, yes, your dog depends on you to be fed and to be walked and all that, but I don't think that its love is dependent on you feeding it or not feeding it. And I think that's our projection onto the dog, because that's what we project onto all our relationships, is that we believe that it's like, I'm doing this for you, so you're going to do this for me. I do this for you, you'll love me back. And that's where a lot of breakdown happens, especially in relationship, is that we believe that if we do this for someone, if I just do this for them, then they're going to love me. You know,
I completely agree.
And it's that whole seeking outside of ourselves, trying to prove that we're good enough to be loved.
I completely agree.
You know, and if we could just get off the romantic side of love for a second, because there's unconditional love in all relationships. But, you know, say it's your friend or your brother or your sister or whatever, I think that we put so many conditions on those relationships as well. You know, like if this person treats me this way, then I'm going to continue to love them. But, you know, if my sister, starts doing this or doesn't do that for me anymore, then I'm not going to love her anymore. And she has to do this. Or it's same with friends. Like, you know, as long as they keep calling me on my birthday or, you know, coming over or whatever the conditions you have,
just for the record, girls are so worse than boys when it comes to that, Lisa.
I would agree with that. But yeah, absolutely. But I mean, we put conditions on love in all relationships. It just gets a little bit trickier when it's a romantic relationship. But, you know, we use that term, I love you, so loosely. You know, you love your mother, you love your sister, you love your brother. But you just have to watch television for 5 minutes and you can see how we're programmed to believe, you know, that people have to do things for you in order for you to continue to love them. And why can't we just love each other exactly where we're at, no matter what, all the time? You don't have to agree with everybody. People don't have to make the decisions that you think that they should make or anything. We have to take responsibility for our own feelings and know that if somebody treats us poorly, like maybe they're just a cry for help or whatever, and that they're just a mirror image of us, and understanding that we have to love ourselves first, and we're not trying to look for that in another person. Another person doesn't have to do anything for us to love them.
I think you
have to love them.
I think you touched up on something that I did want to bring up, which is the how we learn how to love when we're young. And unfortunately, I think pop society, TV shows, movies have just hurt us so badly in this department. I can just think, we always go to like those Disney movies as like a very good example of like, oh, it's such a great story. But when you like think about what it actually teaches, it's like, oh, wow, that's not very good at all. And
Leave It to Beaver or
I'm not talking about like that? Especially Disney princess movies. Those things.
Oh, that, yeah.
Yeah,
or any of them.
Right. And then when it says, and they lived happily ever after, in the back of my mind now, I'm like, bullshit. Because it's like happily ever after. Okay, you meet your Prince Charming, everything's great. You get married in a castle, and they live happily ever after.
And then he lays on the couch in his underwear, and he starts scratching himself.
They don't see that part. They don't see that part, Lisa. They don't see that part on TV. They don't see that part in the movies. And I think we as a society in relationships don't know how to handle that part. And we think that it has to be nothing but roses and wine and whatever in a relationship, when there is that, oh wait, this is not everything I signed up for. And I'm sorry to bring it back to relationships, Lisa, because I actually
that's
agree.
Okay. I just wanted to make that point.
I actually agree with you when it comes to general love with people that you meet. Meaning, like, I love, and the word care. I care for people I meet. I care for you guys. I care for
Why
a lot of
can't you say you love us? Like,
But I can't. But the reason why I
love
can't
us?
say you love is only because society or whatever in my mind has ruined that word. I think care is almost a stronger word than love. That's how bad it is, you know.
So, okay, so
But
you just created like a really negative association with the word love.
that's probably what it is. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, so let's talk about this just from the idea of the law of one. Okay. So if we're all connected, then if you don't love someone, like it could be a stranger, if you can't have the capacity within you to love everyone, then you don't have the capacity to love all of you. And so that's why I feel like your idea of this exclusivity around love, like that it's used so freely, I understand where you're coming with that. Like, I understand that it's not so much that people shouldn't use the word so freely. It's that I don't think people understand what love is. And so I do believe that love should be given to everyone and anyone. And that is a testament to how much you love yourself. But
I think a lot of people believe you can't love more than one person. Like when you're in a relationship and, God forbid you speak of like your ex partner, and say, I love them. Like your current partner would be like, what? Like you love them? Like, yeah, I still love that person.
Lisa, you want to hear a funny story? I literally
Yes.
lost one of my best friends because her boyfriend saw a text message from me, and me and her used the term love you too.
That happened in my marriage. My ex-husband freaked out.
Yeah, and her boyfriend said, "You never talk to this guy again. Delete him. I don't even. If you ever do, we're broken up." And it was like, "Are you kidding me?" And again, Nicole, this is the reason why, in my opinion, or not in my opinion, in my life, and I'm so glad Brian's on here to give a different perspective. But in my life, that word "love" is kind of like on the negative side of the fence when it comes to me.
it's not the word love, it's the energy that's put behind it over like the years, it's centuries, like millennia of human existence.
But those are those conditions.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, what I experienced is, it's not that conditions are good or bad. I mean, I guess sometimes it's okay to have conditions or expectations, but a lot of times in a relationship, they're unaired. They're not spoken. The expectations are private, and I can never meet an unspoken expectation.
Well, okay, so I think you're kind of going into that whole arena where women are like, doesn't he just understand that's what I want?
Men do that too.
Yeah, men do it too. They do. But that also speaks to this breakdown of communication where I just don't think people are communicating properly either. And so when there's this resentment that starts to build because you have these expectations and someone's not meeting them, or they didn't do something for you the way you thought, you would do it for them, like then now all of a sudden your love has become conditional. And that's why it's so important. It's so important to completely be able to love yourself wholly and unconditionally before you engage in a relationship with another partner who ideally you want them to also be in the same position as you. And the reality is that 99% of the people out there are not.
I agree with that, and I think
I agree with
99% of the people don't know how to love themselves because society teaches you to hate your freaking self.
It's true.
What does that mean, to love yourself? Like for our listeners, simply, I've said that to people before who tell me, "Oh no, I love myself." Like they believe that they love themselves, but they don't understand what it truly means to love yourself. So Nicole, can you simply explain to our listeners, what does that mean to love yourself?
I think you need to, first of all, find and understand all of the things that bring you joy. And once you know all of the things that bring you joy, you need to start doing those for yourself. So for me, like, I know that if there are certain activities that make me happy, then I make sure that I am doing those things for myself. I know that in order for me to have a happier mindset, I need to be healthy. So I make sure that I eat a very relatively healthy diet. I also exercise, 4 to 6 times a week, whether it's like weight workouts, running, or yoga, because it keeps me feeling good about myself. It keeps my mind healthy, keeps my body healthy. I'm taking care of myself. The breath work, I do this breath work for every 20 minutes a day, and I never miss a day. And it's because it helps me expand my consciousness by me doing this breath of life. I think we've talked about it on the show once.
We have.
But I sit for 20 minutes and all I do is this breath of life, which is breathing in through your nose to the count of 7, holding that breath for 3 seconds, and then tilting my nose towards my heart space, my chest, and exhaling through my nose as well. And I sit there and I do that. The first thing I do in the morning is that I don't even go and brush my teeth or anything like that yet. That's the very first thing I do, because that is me letting me know that I'm taking care of me first in the morning. Like I'm making sure I'm topped up before I even start my day. And a lot of us don't even think about doing these small little things for ourselves to make sure that, we're coming at the day in the best way possible for us. It relaxes my mind. I feel more at peace. These things are all important to me. Is I want to have a happier life. So I make sure that I'm in a state of mind that is not only happy, but attracting more happiness into my life. I look at my friends, am I surrounded with like-minded and happier people versus people who are choosing more negative perspectives on life, Debbie Downers, that kind of stuff. Like I don't want to hang around people like that. So
you have conditions with your love. Interesting. Continue.
No, it's not conditions with my. No. That has nothing to do with love. That has to do with what I want my energy field to be surrounded with.
Okay.
But I think and Nicole, you make a great point. I asked you to explain what self-love is, and you did a great job, because I think what happens is we don't do those things for ourselves. So we know, there's certain things that bring us joy, and we don't take the time to think about what those things are and make them a priority in our life. And then what happens is we expect our partner to fill us with that joy. So, we expect our partner to say, bring us flowers or make us dinner or, have the house cleaned up when we get home or, whatever the case may be. And because we're looking for things to fill our joy, to make us joyful, instead of just simply doing those things that make us happy for ourselves. And if we start the day off like you do and we're happy and we've already filled ourselves up, there's really nothing that we need to look to our partner for. We're not asking our partner to fill us up. We're just enjoying our partner.
Yeah, exactly.
We're just enjoying the time that we have with them, and we're loving them, and they're hopefully taking care of themselves as well. And if their idea of taking care of themselves is something different than your idea of taking care of yourself, like, those things don't cross. Like, your partner doesn't want to do breath work and they're not into exercise or whatever, that should be perfectly fine, as long as you two understand that, what you're doing is you're filling yourself. But a lot of couples, like, there's, say, for example, the man loves to go hiking or fishing, or maybe he likes to play golf. And it's so typical. I'll just use golf as an example. And the woman to be like, you can't go play golf. Like, you need to be home and you need to spend time with me. And she's not allowing him to do the things that fill him with joy and make him happy. And vice versa. Maybe she likes to go have cocktails with her girlfriend or go shopping or get her nails done or whatever, go to yoga, whatever it might be. And then he says, well, you should spend more time at home and, the house isn't clean enough. And why are you off doing those things? And I think if in a relationship, if we make the priority to fill ourselves up, not trying to fill each other up, make that the priority. I think the men relationships would go much better.
Yeah, I've always said that I will never expect from someone what I'm not willing to do for myself. And so if I'm not willing to do it for myself, or I can't do it for myself, I will never expect someone else to do it for me. And I don't even expect is the wrong word, but I would never, it's just one of those things where I feel like, for instance, me being single right now, if I really wanted to go on a date and I didn't have anyone to go on a date with, I'd just take myself out on a date. I'd go to a bar, maybe a jazz bar, have a glass of wine, listen to some music. Maybe I'd meet someone at the bar, talk, and it wouldn't necessarily just need to be a man, like anyone, and just have a good night. And I think we think that, when you're single, that if you don't have a partner to go and do these things with, that you just can't go out and do them. I don't know. Like, that's just, like, I had a girlfriend say, I wish I had a boyfriend right now, because there's this jazz bar and there's this band's playing that I really wanted to listen to, and it'd just be so nice just to go have a glass of wine. And I'm like, well, why aren't you going? She goes, well, I don't have anyone to go with. And I'm like, so don't you want to go? And she's like, yeah. And I was, so go on a date with yourself. Take yourself and go have a glass of wine and enjoy yourself. And she did. And she went and she was texting. She's like, I'm so happy I did this. Like, thank you so much. She goes, I'm having such a good time. She got dressed up. She put some makeup on. She did all the things that she would have done if she were getting ready to go on a date. And so, she doesn't need someone to come now and do that for her, because she did it for herself. And I think that's so important. And I really do believe that that's where a lot of relationships start on the wrong foot, is that everyone goes in on both the men and the male and the female side that, I'm expecting these things from you because this is what society has taught us, whether it be through, forms of media, schooling, religion, whatever it may be, that it's supposed to be this way.
But that's, to me, when I listened to that little story, you were right on the money when you said that's what society has taught us. But it takes people like you and Lisa who are enlightened. I mean, not to be punny about the name of the podcast, but you're aware. You two are more aware of things that are going on in not only your own daily life, but other people's lives. And you pay attention to things that we just don't pay attention to.
That's because I was a therapist for 17 years and had people tell me their stories for the 17 years on the table. And so I listened, and I just realized there was this overwhelmingly common denominator, and that was it, is that all these people were seeking outside of themselves for something that they weren't willing to do for themselves. So
I agree, because I'm coming from the same industry as you are, Nicole, and I deal with a lot of that. And that's where I think people go wrong, is by doing what you're saying.
Yeah. So I think, our romantic partners provide us with some of our biggest lessons of self. And so I know when I think back to any of my more meaningful relationships, long-term relationships that I was involved with, they were some of the most tumultuous times in my life, painful times in my life, because they're meant for us to really look at ourselves in a different way. And that's one of the reasons why we enter into relationships with certain people, is because there's something there that person is going to be highlighting for us to figure out for ourselves. And, so our partners often become major mirrors for us. And there's a beautiful benefit to that. There's so much growth that can happen through being in those types of relationships. It doesn't mean that your only growth comes from that, but there are definitely things that come through in those types of relationships that wouldn't come through in others.
I think that also is the beauty of art. I mean, I know that when I think of art, I know that I use the word love. I love art. And I think those are a lot of the same reasons or qualities of going to look at art. Is it's almost like being in a relationship, because there are so many emotions that artist put on the canvas or in the sculpture or whatever the form of art may be, that we can learn from, and we can, feel that pain or that joy just in looking at something beautiful.
I
think that's all. Okay, so that, I'm sorry to go back to something we said in the past, but that's another way of saying, like, or not what you said, Brian, but just using the way you use the term love. It's like, that's another way people say, oh my gosh, I love the iPhone. I love this. I love that. And that's another thing that, in my opinion, just kind of really devalues that word.
I love bacon.
I love bacon. Oh my God. I love, it's just whatever. It's like everything that isn't using the term like, I don't even hear anybody say the word like anymore.
Well, except in California in the 90s, like totally.
Right. Like, yeah, like back then. Yeah, but so.
Well, I think, though, that isn't, I think in English, that's just a result of us having very few words to describe.
Well, the reason why I reiterate that is because I think, whatever, that you guys are using a term that almost needs a new word or a new way of describing it. Because I actually feel like I understand what you and Lisa are talking about, and Brian for that matter, when it comes to love, but I just don't feel like that word defines what you guys are describing, I guess. I hate to say it like that.
But that's because you've got the negative associations with
I know,
it, so you
I know.
need to
And that's
you need to let go of that association.
Well, that's a me problem, and I will figure out that on my off hours.
I think you can define it for yourself. Define what it is, and let go of the beliefs, the old beliefs that you have about it.
Yeah, that's
I
what
don't
I think
necessarily know it.
I understand what you're saying. I don't use the word love. But when people say it to me, I like poo-poo it or whatever.
That's because love hurts you, and you're still
and you believe it
in pain
well,
over
I just
that.
don't believe it. I don't believe in the word, and that's but that goes, that's a problem with that I have that shouldn't be in the show.
I don't think that's a problem, Michael. I think you're onto something. We have cheapened the word. I mean, all the TV shows and movies, and we say we love the iPhone or I love that. We have cheapened the word, and you want love to be this
on its own pedestal.
thing.
On its own pedestal.
Right. And it's not. It's a word that we throw around cheaply.
See, I knew there's a reason why Brian should be on the show.
And you get to use it in your own way, though. So,
yeah.
Be the change you want to see in the world, right? So you yourself get to choose how you use that word.
That's what I do, Lisa. So I agree with you.
Yeah. So if you, don't want to cheapen it and say, I love the iPhone, then just say, wow, I really like
at this current
phone.
moment, the only people I say I love you to are like the closest friends that I have, and then my family. And that's it. And when I say closest friends, I can count them all in one hand.
See, and for me, I don't hold my love back from anybody. Like in my heart, I truly feel love for people that I've just met. But it's not a romantic love that I'm necessarily feeling, but it's a love like from my heart. Like I feel the oneness. Like I know that we are all one, and so it's a little bit different in that regard. I love deeply, and I am moved sometimes, just overwhelmed with feelings of love for small things, or for people, or for situations, and and then there's the romantic side of love. When I'm feeling romantic love, but overall, I don't hold my love back from anyone, and I give it freely.
Yeah, it's like that human-to-human connection. It's just that fundamental human emotion of love. It's what we're all. It's love really is, everything comes from love. Fear cannot exist where there's love. So
the opposite of love is fear.
yeah. So when we last couple episodes we talked about frequency. So love is one of the highest frequencies. And so all of that other stuff, when you're talking about real love, not the love that we're taught to believe, all the conditional love. Then nothing like jealousy, possession, obsession, all of that stuff can't exist. So if it is existing in your relationship, then you're not on that love frequency.
And you can say you love someone and you can say you're in love with someone, but that doesn't mean that you're acting out of love. I love you, so I expect, if you loved me, then you would, behave this way. I mean, my marriage was one big expectation of ifs for love, and it just basically, if you let me chain you to a fence and do everything that I want you to do for me, then you must love me. And if you don't, then you don't.
Oh, so let's talk about that. Sacrifice. People believe that love requires sacrifice, and it's the biggest falsity ever. Like, love does not require sacrifice. And we are so conditioned to believe that that is the case. Religion conditions that heavily into us, I think. And that, if you are in a relationship and you love someone, you're going to have to make some sacrifices, or like that whole idea. No, you don't need to make sacrifices. That's not love. Love is...
you should be able to be yourself.
Yeah, you should honor the person for who they are, and that person should honor you for who you are. And you don't need to make sacrifices. When it's true unconditional love, there are no sacrifices needed.
Just because someone doesn't love you the way you want them to does not mean that they don't love you with their whole heart.
Okay, now you bring up a good point. We define love by the actions that people do, and that is not necessarily what love is.
Yeah, that was the point I was trying to make with even non-romantic relationships, like in anything, if it's by the action. So you can still love someone even though they're not doing what it is that you want or expect them to do.
Yeah.
You have to let them free. It's like that cliche, let something go, and if it comes back to you kind of thing.
Free a bird and it flies back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, so let's think of this. Like, a lot of women, he didn't take out the trash like I asked him to. He doesn't love me. Or the husband, she didn't make me dinner tonight. She doesn't love me. Or,
or he forgot our anniversary.
Yeah. Oh, he doesn't love me. Like, there's just, it's so backwards on.
But then there's the other side of that too. I think there's misunderstood love. I'm hearing you say those things made me think of this joke that I heard a long time ago, and it was about this old married couple, and it's their 50th or 70th anniversary or something like this, and the husband is making her breakfast and gives her breakfast, and she says, "You know what? After 70 years, every morning, you give me the worst, the heel of the toast, and I just hate it, and I don't understand why you always give me the worst piece of the bread." And he said, "But that's the best part." So he felt he was sacrificing because of his love, and she saw it through a different pair of eyes.
Oh, perspective is everything. Perspective creates our reality. So whatever lenses you're looking through is what your reality is. So as soon as you shift your perspective on anything, your entire reality changes as well. So
well, there's the love languages, and I know there's a book about it, the 5 languages of love or something, and we can look up the author of that for the podcast notes, but it talks about how people have different love languages of how they feel love. Like some people like to, are verbal people, or they want to hear it all the time. Or maybe some people feel like they're being loved when they're given gifts, or maybe your time, or, there's just, everybody has a different expectation of how they feel loved. And if you're not communicating or to your partner and saying, this is what makes me feel loved when you do this or you do that, and we just expect them to know, like, everybody loves the way I do. Of course he knows that, I want flowers once a week, and some women don't like flowers at all. So it's like we just have these expectations, like Brian said, just because somebody's not loving you the way that you want them to, it doesn't mean that they're not loving you with their whole heart.
Yeah, and I think as it all goes full circle, is like if you're already filled with love from your own self, none of that stuff even matters anymore. It doesn't. Like none of that stuff will ever faze you because you're already filled with love. You don't need it from your partner. It's a bonus. It's just a sharing of experiences together. You're coming to the table and you're already full, So I just feel like it all comes full circle with that.
So I think that the greatest advice, if I don't know if we're really in the advice business here, but it's taking care of yourself, like you said, Nicole, like loving yourself and doing the things every day that are going to bring you joy, and then communicating that to your partner, that these are the things that I need to feel self-love and to feel good every day. And like how can we make it so that this is going to work, because people have busy work schedules, or maybe they have, kids, and things have to get done, right? Somebody's got to cook dinner, somebody's got to bathe the children or take them to school, or, whatever the case is. But in order for me to have self-love, like, I need 45 minutes a day to be by myself or go do the things that I need to do. And you have to be able to communicate to each other and give that time to each other and love each other enough.
Magical word, Lisa. Communicate. I love it, because that's
the most
something that we all suffer. Not we all. A lot of us suffer from. And I agree with you. I think if you just know how to communicate, your love with any kind of relationship, friendship or romantic, would 10,000 times better. And I'll admit, in my own failings of my own personal relationships, most of it was communication problems.
Mm-hmm. We have to learn to use our words. We don't use our words. Brian and I actually tease each other. Like, it's a joke. Like, if there's something on your mind or you want something a certain way, like, it's not my responsibility to read your mind. Like, just use your words. Just say it.
We go back to the old joke, haha, women expect you to know. Women expect you to read their minds. Mm-hmm. At least on the guy side of the fence, that's the joke that we hear. It's like, oh, why didn't you just freaking tell me? I literally, the last marriage counseling appointment I had with my ex, that was the biggest problem. My significant other, wife, whatever, did not want to communicate her problems with me. So she stuffed it all inside for many years, and boom, we're not together anymore. And so it was like, but like, I'm easy. You tell me something, I will change, or I will try, or I'll do things that will try to help. But if I don't know I'm doing anything wrong for a couple of years, it's like, where's the blame go? Sure, I'll take some responsibility, but like, just tell me.
Ironically, Lisa and I can't read each other's minds. That is a different episode, I think.
I don't want my significant other to read my mind, by the way.
Brian does tell me to get out of his mind sometimes. He goes, will you just get out of there? Just go. This is private.
It's so funny that brings me up. So Tiffany, our common friend, Nicole and Lisa, our common friend, I told Nicole the other day, I'm like, I'm afraid to talk to her because I have to tell her the truth because she'll know when I'm lying.
Yeah. Telepathic communication. Which is really really is how we're all designed to communicate. We've just forgotten over the many, many years, millennia of years, I should say. But, that's actually how we're supposed to communicate, because there's feelings already in the thoughts. And so it's already explained the best way. We don't have to find the words. And I think languages is where it makes it difficult sometimes. And obviously, like, we think just even in the English language, like we said, we don't have enough words to describe our feelings, and we just have this one word, love. So,
but how weird is that? We just laughed about it and we just joked about telepathic communication and how that's a problem in a lot of relationships because we don't use our words and we expect people to read our minds, but then maybe that's the best way and we're not there.
That's a very good point.
That's
a very good point.
We're not open. There's too many things that are in the way that are not allowing that to happen.
Yeah.
And we,
and
like
vibration
and frequency and being
so many
open
variables.
and fear and expectations and all these things start blocking those frequencies so that we're not able to connect. And, obviously Brian and I have a connection on a higher level and same with Nicole and I, because we also read each other's minds to where those blocks aren't there. So sometimes it just allows it to happen. Not all the time. I mean, we're not 100% here, but at times there's truly telepathic communication and it comes as a surprise to you. You're like, okay, yeah, that's right. I was thinking that. How did you know? But there's just too many blocks. It's like too many blocks to love's presence because love is really all that there is and it's always there, but we're putting up these blocks and they all stem from fear.
Yeah. So, and while the reality is that, we do a lot to fill our own cup up and that allows us, because we're loving ourselves much more. I know I am much more than I did even just like a few years ago. That I'm now finding that, telepathic communication is becoming a lot more normal for me than it was, say, even just a year ago. And it's from what we talked about in the past 2 episodes on raising your vibrations and improving your frequency so that you're resonating at that higher, faster frequency rate. So like when you start to love yourself and do all these things, you're naturally going to be in that frequency. So these things do become possible when you get there.
And I think what happens with, one of the reasons that we don't love ourselves is we're also trained not to. We're trained to believe that taking time for ourselves is selfish.
Exactly.
And that we're supposed to make sacrifices and that's, the last option of, if there's 3 things we need to do today, if it's take a bath with a glass of wine, because that's what we really want to do, that's going to be the one that's least important because we have to do the laundry first or the dishes or, clean the closet or whatever it might be, because we think that we have to be always doing something for somebody else or completing tasks, and we don't prioritize loving ourselves. I just think that's really, really common, and I think it's something that we've been taught not to do.
Yeah, definitely. That whole idea of selfishness, being a bad thing, where it's a good thing. It's a good thing to want to take care of you first, because you're no good to someone else if you're not taken care of. How do you have anything to give if you haven't completely filled your cup up? Like they say, you don't fill your cup up to its full. You fill it till it's overflowing, so you have reserves to give. So you need to be selfish to the point that you have reserves for other people, that you're never taking away from anything that you've built up for yourself.
That's a great way of saying it. I like that.
I think that's great. And I think if anyone could learn anything from this, conversation that we've had today is if you want to improve your relationships, love yourself first, and communicate that to your partner as a need that you have. It's as important as eating and sleeping and brushing your teeth every day. You've got to take time to do the things that fill your cup. And it's not selfish. No. I'm sure that's an argument that a majority of the couples have. I mean, I know I heard it in my marriage about, being selfish. Like you're supposed to do something for the other person first before you would do it for yourself. And that means that you love them. You're supposed to sacrifice and think about what it is they want and do it for them first.
Ideally, you want to be in a relationship with someone where you look at them and you see them doing something for themselves that makes them so happy that it makes you happy. You're like, oh,
Exactly.
they're so happy right now. That would make me happy, and I would hope that my partner would feel the same if they saw me doing something that brought me so much joy. They just naturally feel happy, regardless if they liked what I did or didn't do. Like it's just, you look at the joy that comes through, and that's ultimately, I feel like that joy then becomes infectious. So if I were to see my partner doing something that really just made them so joyful, I feel like that would build joy within me just to see it. Like it's almost like that energy field will expand around them and embrace you as well. Like you get to feed off of it as well. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that that's important for, like, I have children, and they are older now. They're in their 20s, and they're making decisions, and whether I agree with them or I don't agree with them, like, makes no difference. I love them exactly where they're at. Like, they don't, as long as they're happy and they're finding their joy, then I'm happy. There's no conditions as to anything that they have to do in order for me to love them. And I'm trying to, be a good example to them by just being that and loving them for each other, because they have conditions that they've set, on each other. And I hear that from them. And I'm trying to teach them that, just love your brother where he's at, no matter whether you agree with it or you don't agree with it. Just keep loving him, because it doesn't have to do, nobody should have to do anything the way you think it needs to be done in order for you just to love that person. Mm-hmm. And if somebody's mad at you and they're not speaking to you, you can continue to just love that person. Just keep sending them love, and they don't have to talk to you. They don't have to send you a birthday card. They don't have to do all the things that you think that they have to do in order for you to just continue to love them. My friend, I was with her in California recently, and we were talking. I said something about I had done something for my birthday, and her face just got like all white. And she always sends me a birthday card. She always calls me, and she didn't this year. And I literally didn't remember. She was like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe it. Like, I'm so sorry. And I was like, I go, let's just pretend you did, because I don't even remember. Like, it doesn't matter to me. It makes no difference. I know you love me. Like, we've been friends for such a long time. Like, whether you send me a birthday card or you don't, makes no difference to me.
Yeah,
I don't think any less of you for a moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's where, if you have compassion, that's where the compassion comes in. And, you look at the other person just through compassion and say, oh, like, what are they feeling right now? And that it's one of the major elements that gets lost, I think, with love, is that compassion factor. Because when you bring in the compassion for another, all of a sudden your heart just kind of melts a little bit. It's not as cold and as icy as it was when, you're like, oh, you didn't do this for me, or how could you do that to me? And when you start to have compassion and maybe see things from their perspective, it's always nice to have fresh perspectives and to kind of change the lens that you're looking out of, because there are multiple ways to see everything all the time.
Brian actually has a good example of that right now.
It's a very hard example, and I'm being forced almost to talk about it. No forcing, but you just led the horse to the water. I have a 15-year-old daughter that refuses to speak with me, and it is challenging every aspect of this concept of love that I have. Of course, as a father, we've talked about this, I should have unconditional love for her. And sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes it's really hard to, in my mind, say I love her, because we don't get a chance to communicate at all. There's just no phone calls, or I haven't seen her in months. And I know a lot of people deal with that. Lisa didn't see her dad for a decade. So I know people all over the world deal with being in a relationship with family. That the easiest aspect of unconditional love, which is what we've talked about. We should have that unconditional love. Mm-hmm. But it's hard. It's hard sometimes.
It tests you. It definitely does. And, we're all human and we're all going to make mistakes and we're all going to probably move out of unconditional love more times than we realize. That's part of being human. I think but it's important again to have that compassion for yourself and understand that you're just doing the best that you can and you're trying. I think as long as we have the awareness that we're trying to be better at something, that we're trying to improve and move more towards a positive way of living and loving, then that's all anyone can really ask for. And it's a learning process for everyone. We're all learning. I think the unconditional love, we just assume parents unconditionally love their children and that children unconditionally love their parents and sisters and brothers unconditionally love each other. Well, no, that's not the case. There's a lot of dysfunction in many families, and it's part of it comes from that idea of not really understanding what love is, because we assume that our parents know everything when we come into this world, and the truth is they're just doing the best that they know how, given what their parents taught them. And so it's important to always have that aspect of compassion, understand that everyone's trying to do the best they can and that we're all going to make mistakes, but as long as we have that awareness that we are trying to be better and improve upon the conditions that are set before us, then I think that's all we can ask for from ourselves.
And I think that we spoke about a little bit before about how, relationships are our greatest teachers, and they're, everyone is a mirror for us. So, maybe when someone isn't speaking to you or not doing the thing that you want them to do, the most important thing is to see that person as yourself and just continue to love them. Just continue to think loving thoughts about them.
Easier said than done.
Yes, definitely a challenge, but I think it helps us to grow ourselves. Like maybe maybe we need to show ourselves compassion. Maybe that's the lesson that it's teaching us, that we need to have compassion with ourselves. And if we're able to show compassion and love to the person that's hurting us, then we're only giving that same gift to ourselves. And I think if you can turn it around and think of it in that way, like, okay, I'm just looking in a mirror, how would I want myself to be treated? Then just continue to love yourself, and love yourself by loving that other person just right where they're at.
Mm-hmm. Is that not the golden rule? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Yep. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if my astral self knew that we were going to be having this podcast recording today, but I had a very interesting dream. And Lisa, you were in it.
Well, let's hear it, Nicole.
So this was actually probably the coolest experience I've ever had in any of my dreams. And we were on a paddle board together, I guess. It was kind of like that kind of a structure on the water. And I don't know where we were. It was very open water. Like it was definitely the sea. And the sun was setting. And then we looked out to the horizon, and there was a massive cloud right in front of the sun before it was hitting the horizon. But then there were no clouds around this cloud. It was just one big cloud. And it was the light that was coming through the cloud was like this magenta, purple, pink, and white flecks all through it. It was really interesting. And I looked at you and I said, oh my gosh, look, it's a heart chakra. and you're like, what? And you're like, oh my God, it is a heart chakra. And for our audience who doesn't know what chakras are, they're like an energy vortex within our body. Like our body has 7 major energy vortexes, and the one over our heart is called the heart chakra. And however, that chakra is green. However, there's also another chakra, not part of that 7, which is called the high heart chakra, and it's magenta. And so that's what I was seeing, was that high heart chakra. And it was the coolest thing. It's like as soon as we knew that it was the heart chakra, it's like it went from a flat image in our eyes to becoming very 3D, and the clouds started moving towards us, and these crystalline structures, almost like flat, they were like thin, flat, like crystalline structures that were waved, like they were kind of warped, and they were coming at us through the sky like we were in the cosmos. And so they're coming at us with these kind of purplish kind of stardust clouds around them, and they were going over top of our heads. And I was just looking at it going, oh my God, where's my phone? I gotta take pictures of this. And you're like, yeah, take pictures. And we were just watching. It was so peaceful. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It was the most cosmic experience, seeing these beautiful, it was like agate crystal. No, it was like agate crystal, but thinner pieces of it that were kind of warped. And they were all the same colors, like the magenta, purple, like white stripes through it, and pink. And they just floated over us, and I felt like we were being showered in cosmic love. I know that sounds really weird, but it was so peaceful. It was so peaceful, and that is an element of love, is peace. And I just remember waking up going, oh my gosh, I don't know where I just went, but I want to go back. It was really, really cool. It's like,
I know the question on Michael's and my mind is, did you have an iPhone 7 in your dream?
No, I never have an iPhone. I'm so anti-iPhone. So
you don't love your iPhone then?
I don't have an iPhone to love or not love.
We were on these paddle boards the whole time?
We were on one paddle board. I was in front of you.
Together.
I was kind of like lying on my back, looking up at the sky, and you were sitting at the back end of it. And and it's just it was like we were in some sort of cosmic heart chakra.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah. So, interesting.
You guys will definitely have to do a podcast on dreams, because Lisa remembers and interprets her dreams often and finds meaning in them, and I rarely do. I rarely remember them, and if I do, I don't search for meaning in it. And I'd be curious if, Michael, you feel the same way.
I have lots of dreams. My dreams are many times intense. My dreams can be very, like I'm a big, I love certain TV shows, like, Game of Thrones and all that kind of stuff. But my dreams are more interesting. It's like they have some serious, interesting things that happen to them. However, where my skepticism builds is does that mean anything, or is it just my brain going crazy while I take a nap? And so I kind of agree with you there. So therefore, if a person doesn't put importance on their dreams, there's a very significant chance they're not going to remember their dreams.
I think that's a good point. But I had a very interesting experience about dreams today. I have been putting a lot of my personal mental energy into something the last couple of days. And this morning, Lisa told me that she dreamt. When she was telling me about her dream from last night, it is what I've been thinking a lot about. So,
well, Lisa's crazy psychic, so you got that problem with your significant other.
Well, the same thing happened with Nicole and I had this experience in San Diego just a couple days ago.
Yeah.
Lisa, I'm going to Vegas in 2.5, 3 weeks. Can you chime into that side of the fence?
I'll give you some numbers before you go.
There we go. And by the way, the last time I went gambling with Lisa, she won a lot, and Nicole.
I won the same amount last week when I went up.
Yeah. Okay. Good person to go out with in Vegas.
Yeah, good person to go to the roulette table with.
So I had this experience where I had a very large bug on me while I was waiting for a train, which it's kind of a funny situation. But I ended up missing my train because I got a little frazzled and jumped on the wrong train. And I called Nicole to tell her about kind of what my experience and what had ended up happening. And she had a dream the night before about a train and like something.
Yeah, I had just woken up that morning. I had a dream that I was running down a train tunnel, like an underground train tunnel, and there were like really bad spirits or evil people on this train, and as the train was coming into the tunnel where I was at, I had to jump behind a pillar to hide so they didn't see me, and then the train went through, and then it was about trying to get out of the train tunnel, and found a door that was kind of camouflaged into the wall that had a little mini window on it, and that's how we knew it was a door, and we opened it and got into a stairwell and were able to escape. But it was like a confirmation. I felt like I had that dream. Lisa literally missed her train, like in real life, because a cockroach was sitting on her throat chakra, and a man came over to her and he's like, "Don't move," and he put his hand up to her neck. Most people wouldn't allow that to happen.
A homeless man.
and a palmetto bug. They're much cleaner than cockroaches.
So
Brian said it's a palmetto bug, but that's beside the point. It was huge, and it looked like it was like 2 inches long. It looked like a cockroach, and a homeless man pulled it off my neck.
Yeah, and she ends up missing her train, and getting on the wrong one, and then she tries to get back on to get onto the next one, and then it's gone. Like, she misses it literally by seconds. So I'm like, I had a dream that there were really bad spirits, people on a train, and I just don't think you were supposed to be on that train at all. And I just think it was a kind of tuning in to. Some people would just say, "Oh, that's just a coincidence." But, Lisa and I kind of know a little bit better. And we're like, "Nope, that's just a confirmation for me to tell you weren't supposed to be on that train."
Is there no such thing as coincidences in your guys' lives?
No.
Apparently not.
No.
Apparently not, because like all of a sudden I look at the clock with Nicole and it's 11 o'clock, 11 minutes after 11 o'clock. She's, "Oh my God, it's 11:11." I'm like,
I saw that yesterday. I looked at a clock or a watch at 1:11. 11:11, 1:11, 4 times in a row. I didn't miss it once. But
it happens so many times a day. That's where I'm like, okay, guys, calm down.
4 times.
No,
many
but
times.
I think
12, 12, 11, 11, 9, 9, all those kind of things.
The significance of time is in those number sequences is that if there's something that you're saying and you notice the numbers at that time and it's significant, like there's a tie in there. Like, you should be
just for the record, I'm sorry, we have to say this in case some people are listening and don't know what the heck we're talking about. Lisa and Nicole believe if 2 numbers show up in a quick moment that are the same, that angels are talking to them. Future podcast, cough, cough. But anyway, continue.
We might want to end. I think our time is up.
Yeah, I think our time is up. But we
could do this as a 2-parter because there's plenty more that I want to say about this.
Because we have such an exciting guest coming on next week, and that I think is going to be more exciting than anything we could conjure up with angels and numbers and all of that
Brian,
stuff.
then promise that Brian will be back on in a future podcast because there's a lot of things that we have left unsaid with this topic.
You like having another male here, don't you, Michael?
Yes. I love having another skeptical male. And I actually asked Nicole a couple weeks ago, is there a difference between men and women with what you guys believe? Because I feel like there's a lot more women that believe your guys' stuff than men.
Yes, I think that it would appear that way, but I also think it's because women are more open to feeling things than men are, and so they're naturally more intuitive and can tune into this stuff.
Future podcast.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, it would be my pleasure to join you guys on a future podcast anytime to fill in for Michael if he can't make it or to join the whole crew. But what's interesting
such a great idea.
what's interested to me, being in a relationship with Lisa and seeing things or experiencing things with her, I'm a lifelong skeptic. I just met her son last week, and I told him I'm the mayor of Skeptic Town, and he was very relieved to hear that, because he was not sure about what his mom is doing lately. But I certainly have seen things or have experienced things that challenge the foundation of the
normalcy
of the whole town, all of Skeptic Town, the bedrock.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I think it's always good to have a healthy dose of skepticism in the show. I think it's a great, important aspect of it. So thank you, Brian, for being with us today. And we appreciate you chipping in all that you offered in your own insight and your own experiences. And for our listeners, don't miss our next episode number 7, which is going to be with a guest. His name is Jim. That's all I'm going to say right now, but I'm going to tell you from all of my experiences, I have never in my life met someone who's had the experiences that he has. And I think, Michael, you saying that is a great thing right as we're going into this introduction for our next show, because he's a man and he's had beyond the experiences that Lisa and I have had, and it's going to blow your mind, the stuff that he's going to share with us. It's unbelievable. So I'm really excited to have him on the show with us next week. And for all of our listeners, if you are loving our podcast, please send us some ratings on iTunes. We would love some ratings, preferably positive ones, but we also want to know how we're doing. So if you don't like what we're doing, let us know. We are open to constructive criticism. And so ratings would be great. And if you have any questions that you'd like to send in to our show that you'd like us to answer, or topics that you'd like us to discuss, please send them into our email, info@enlightenup.us, or to our Twitter account, enlightenup.us. And if you want to stay up to date on other things, you can follow us on social media. We are on Facebook and Instagram as well. We have a YouTube channel that have all our episodes up there, but I am back in Denver next week, and so Lisa and I will be doing little mini videos, updates, plus we're going on a really cool road trip soon, and we're going to be doing some video diaries of that, because it's going to deal with some energetic stuff. So we're going to be doing some uploads on that one. So thanks again, guys, for a really good show. We're going to be back again next week with a highly interesting show to come, and I think that's it.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Michael. Love you.
Yeah, I love you, Michael.
I'm just going to say, I know you love me.
I
Thank you
love
for loving me, Lisa. I appreciate your word. You could say care for me if you want to make it more impactful.
I love you too,
I'll take. Brian, let's just not talk about our relationship right now. Can I just say one thing, though? On this show, I think the biggest lesson, if you're going to take anything from the show, in my opinion, ever since meeting Lisa and Nicole, not meet and know them, loving yourself. This is the most generic term we hear out there. Oh, you got to love yourself. You got to appreciate and love yourself. And I hear that. I probably heard that since I was 11, 12, 13 years old. And it meant nothing, absolutely shit, until I met Lisa and Nicole. And I'll give you accolades, Lisa. You actually even impressed me on this show currently by saying, loving yourself means enjoying things that makes you happy and things like that. Now, I can sit there and be the skeptic and say, well, there's nefarious things that make me happy. Should I love myself because of that? But that's a later podcast. However, I believe loving yourself is the best thing that I have tried to do in the past 3 or 4 months. And I really think that I feel like this is if you really care about your current relationship or potentially a future relationship, this is a must. You need to love yourself But I mean, apparently I've been loving myself since 13, but I was wrong on how I was loving myself. I need to correct that.
with lotion and
Stop it, Lisa. Stop it. So, with
That was
being
too easy.
said, you got to make sure you take care of yourself. I really actually am more inclined to love the idea of taking care of yourself, making sure you're worthy of whatever you receive in life. I think that's the most important information that I received, even in the past hour and a half or so.
Yes.
So, yes, love yourself.
I love it.
But love yourself, meaning like start dating yourself, start taking care of yourself, pretend like you're the best person in the world, and start dating that best person, and you'll become that best person. That's it.
Because if you're dating yourself and your dates are awesome, people are going to be like, I want to go on a date with that person.
Exactly.
So
that's a great perspective. I really like that.
yeah. So, and also big question you always need to ask yourself is, am I seeking outside of myself for something in this person that I'm not giving to myself? That's the biggest question you always want to be asking yourself so that you're keeping in check with you. So, but great. No, I think this was a great show. I really think everyone brought some great stuff to the table, really informative and real. So, kudos, guys.
All right.
Okay.
All right, crew.
So we'll catch
See
you
you
next
week.
week, everyone. Have a great week, and
Literally, see you next week, Nicole.
yeah, see you next week. All right, guys, we'll talk to you later.
Bye.